Hello, guys, and welcome to the first edition or the first episode of this year's summer series. And as always, we are looking at the prospect draft from 6 years ago. So, right now, we are going to go back in time to the 2018 draft and look at how it went, what picks we made, and how those picks developed. And starting with the full draft order, there is the Google spreadsheet that I update each season with each revisit, so you can see the link to the spreadsheet below, and you can filter and see how the stats for the draftees are looking. Basically, the 2018 was the Darling draft. He was the top selection, but also not forget these two guys. The picture is a little bit bad quality, but it's hard to find a picture of Brady and Quinn together. So these are maybe as we'll see in the next few slides. These are the top players from the draft. And before we go into the top tens, we first take a look at the overall draft class analysis, because it was something that really surprised me. I wouldn't say blew my mind, but I was surprised that this draft was incredibly shallow in terms of NHL relevant players. As you can see in this picture, compared to all the other drafts that we have revisited in past seasons, the number of NHLers is like less than 1/3 of all selections have turned into everyday NHLers. Here are some fringe, and a big number of players didn't crack the NHL or didn't have performance. Their performance wasn't up to the NHL standard, and you can see it also in this graph, where in previous seasons at least 55% of the players drafted 6 years ago were still in the NHL, and this time a lot of them have bolted to Europe and other leagues, and only 45% are actually NHLers, which is the lowest number from all the drafts we've looked at so far. So really, I don't know. Maybe it's something that we can discuss in the chat, because I wasn't expecting that. I didn't think the 2018 draft was so bad, and I don't think we did worse than the NHL, because many of those prospects that didn't pan out seemed like a really good prospects at the time. And here's a quick trivia question. So which is the highest UDL prospect draft pick who has not played a single NHL game? And this question, in the caveat here, is that we are only looking from the draft revisits that we have already done. So basically the 2012 to 2018 draft. So we are not looking at the most recent drafts, where many prospects have yet to reach the NHL. But if we consider that 6 years is a long enough time, which is the highest selection that has played a total number of 0 NHL games? And we'll find the answer a little bit later, but you can have some guesses. And another thing, which is not exactly a draft class analysis topic, but the Quebec Ramparts waved goodbye to the whole draft thing and didn't have a single selection. This was, if you remember, the last year under Fabrice ownership of the Ramparts, and he was all in at the time, so he had traded all of his draft selections, so no selections for the Ramparts, and we'll see that they will have not been rated in the team ranking at the end of this. So first we look at the top 10s. The first top 10 is the best players from the draft, and here is the ranking that I've put together. So for me, this is there. The clear divide is the top 3 selections are all more or less franchise players, but I've put Brady at the top since he's such an unicorn, especially in our format. Brady Tkachuk leads the draft class in goals, points, shots, penalty minutes, and hits. So basically, he's a machine that fills out all the categories. And I've put Dalian at second because he's not at this level, but is quite similar in terms of defenseman. And Quinn, if you like your points and special team points, then maybe you can rank Hughes ahead of Dalian. But the multi-cat potential of my boy Dalian is really something very valuable in our league. And and this is a picture of me trying to cope with the fact that Dalian is no longer my boy. But Elliot should take good care of him. And further down, you see another pick by James in Dobson, who is, I think, one of the more underrated players, both I think in the NHL and in our league, and he's very valuable. Bouchard has a monster season this time, and he's climbing this ladder here. Maybe if he has another similar season with a point per game, he would come closer to the top 3. And Hintz and Svechnikov for me very close. You can rank Svechnikov above Hintz as he gives you more penalty minutes and hits, and Hintz has given you so far at least a bit more goals, and he's also solid in the face-off circle. And then you see the quite a, I think, drop in the level of to Pionk, but I've ranked Pionk here because I think in our format especially he's been sneaky good in terms of value, and Mark drafted him. I think he drafted him pretty late in terms of age, so he was an immediate contributor for the Ice Dice. But as you see here, and if you remember, I forgot to mention this in the beginning, but the black names are players who have been traded by the original drafting team. So, for example, Pionk and Dalian who have been traded, and the green names are those who still remain and play with the franchise that have drafted them in the UDL. So Brady is still a member of the former Atlanta, now the Halifax team, and so on. So moving on to the next selection, so the best value picks. And here the slide is dubbed hitting home runs, but in this draft it's more like hitting some singles and doubles if we stick with the baseball reference. And this is the first time since I've been doing these revisits where I've had a hard time finding 10 relevant players for this table. But I think the top 3 are quite easy, maybe the top 4, because as you see, some of the names are also part of the top 10 overall players. And I've ranked here Georgiev ahead of Hintz because of how late he was selected. And anytime you can select starting goalie in the 5th round is a win. And with Georgiev, he has had not the best ratios, but he has had solid goalie points and shutouts, so he's a valuable contributor. Also, Hintz and Pionk here. Hronek is a good pick for the Wanderers in the 3rd round. And I've put Koskinen here, and I use now this to mention that Andrew selected Koskinen at 30 years old, which must be one of the oldest draftees in the UDL, and it's definitely the oldest to compare to the coming drafts, because this 2018 draft was the last one that we had no age restriction to the draftees, and also the last one which only had 5 rounds. So from next season we go up to 6 rounds, and we have the 26 years maximum age for the draftees. So Koskinen was an outlier, but he did provide some good value for a couple of seasons for the scouts before bolting back to Europe. And Merzlikens is here, but he's a curious case because if a couple of years ago he would be ranked a lot higher, but now he's basically going down this chart. And for Sandberg, I could have put a handful of other guys here at the 10th spot, but Sandberg is just to show how little NHL relevant players we managed to find in the later rounds. So yeah, again, this draft was not deep. And because the draft was not deep, this was a hard thing to do. The top 10 busts, and there were a lot of candidates here, and the top 10 here is pretty strong. And also here we find the answer to our trivia question at number 1. Dominic Bock is the highest selected player who has not played a single NHL game. He was selected at 11 by Jay and the Ghost, but here there are a lot of high selections that didn't pan out. Zadina played quite a lot of games compared to the others here in the stands, but given how high hopes not only we but basically the whole NHL had for him, the level of production has never been there, and he had more than a couple of chances, and is now a free agent, and it's still not clear if he will even have an NHL job for next season. Other players like Merkley were not that surprising of a bust, but overall a lot of high-profile players, and you see Jay here with three players in the top 10 busts, and you see here the whole class of the Ghosts. Jay had 5 first-round selections and 2 second-round selections, and basically apart from Svechnikov who hit, thankfully, the other players were basically all some level of busts. Some failed some failed spectacularly, others failed like it was a Chinese torture, like Oliver Wahlstrom, who is like each season you hope that he breaks out, but he doesn't. Well, and Denisenko hasn't cracked the NHL. Maybe Berggren can do something, but I think this draft is what forced Jay to think to relocate. He had to invite some millionaires to bail the team out. And a couple of curious facts that maybe not so curious or not so interesting, but what I found out while researching for this draft is Kaut and Zadina played juniors together for Dinamo Pardubice in the Czech Republic, and Martin Kaut is now back with that team in the Czech Republic, and his elite prospects page says that he has a contract until 2034 with that team, which must be a mistake. I don't know if the Czech Republic hands out and the Czech League hands out 10-year contracts, but maybe someone can fact check that. But I thought it was funny. And the Ty Smith here, I definitely could have put other players here who were similarly bad or not as good as they hoped, but I wanted to mention Smith because his production has actually been one of the better ones in terms of per game, but the problem is that he can't crack the NHL lineup for regularly over the last 4 years since his good season in New Jersey. But I don't know what has happened to him and why he can't break. But you see that Max still holds on to him with some hopes. And another thing about the greens and the black names is you see that Bok and Denisenko are two of the prospects who must have stayed the longest in on the Ghosts and now the Millionaires farm. Maybe their trade value is so low that even Jay can move them and they're still on his farm. Anyway, enough enough throwing dirt at Jay's selection. So how well did we do in terms of teams and overall rankings? As you know, I have these Roto rankings that makes this total based on these selections, and this seems a lot closer than it actually is, because there is only one team that had a great draft in this year, and it's the Grizzly Adams. So James crushed it. You see here, the Roto does a very good job of making it closer, because someone has to be second in all the categories, so he gets only 1 point less than Wolfsburg. But Wolfsburg had the most games played by draftees, the most points by draftees, most NHL regulars he'd managed to draft, and so on. So basically, he was the clear-cut winner of this draft. And here is all his class, and you see that Kotkaniemi maybe is not as good as most expected, but it's still definitely an NHL regular. He also drafted Keandre Muir, and his only fail was Noel. And with Formenton, it's like not his fault that he's not in the NHL. I mean, it's not based on talent level, as we know. And so amazing draft by James. And to give the Atlanta, Sheffield, and Chilliwack had very similar drafts in terms that they only drafted one great player, which pulls all their class towards better rankings in this graph. So Chilliwack drafted Bouchard, the Steelers drafted Dalin, and Flames drafted Brady Tkachuk. And basically all the other selections were not great. But another team with a good draft for me in this not great draft overall were the Wanderers, who in 5 selections managed to make the most of them count. Capobianco is like the epitome of a fringe player. He's like, each season he manages to play maybe a handful of games in the NHL, but still is mostly an AHLer. But Hronek, Gustafsson, and Faraby were pretty good, all of them for where they were drafted, I think. So good job by Tim and Nick in this draft. And also you see here who is with their drafting team, who is still with their drafting team. And the interesting thing is, towards the bottom there are still some players who are, especially for the aces, they have 3 of their selections still with in the farm. The green names mean they are still a farm player, and the black names means they are already under contract, maybe RFA or EOC. And for the Blazers, maybe if Perunovic has a good season, that can pull them up a bit in these rankings. And as you see, and as we mentioned, the Ramparts have no selection, so they skip the entire draft, so they are like not ranked in terms of this Roto. But that's it. I hope you liked it. Let me know in the chat or in the comments what you think. If you think your team did better or worse than I have ranked, and feel free to look through the spreadsheet with the whole current career stats of the 2018 draft. And most of maybe a question for Brad and other people who are really more involved in the prospect scouting. Was the 2018 draft bad one in terms of the NHL class, or did we manage to make worse selections than our NHL counterparts. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you around, and have a great summer.